low vision or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Will Evans, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the July 16th, 2026 issues of the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Leading off, our headline is Orange Skies in Western New York. Health warnings continue as wildfire smoke arrives. Like a science fiction movie, traffic navigated Main Street at 5 p.m. Wednesday using headlights beneath orange-brown skies. A musty odor was faintly detectable outdoors. The unearthly environment marked the return of wildfire smoke, which New York State officials said was expected to peak Thursday in what's potentially a multi-day event. Throughout the day, people are going to experience spikes in air quality that could be problematic, said Commissioner Andrea Lefton of the Department of Environmental Conservation during a news conference conducted at noon Wednesday via Zoom. We're going to continue perhaps waves of poor air quality throughout the day, she said. The entire state could see poor air quality today, and will likely see poor air quality today, with the worst impacts being Western New York, Central New York, and the Lake Ontario region. A statewide air quality advisory has been issued for Thursday. Conditions for all of Western and Central New York and Eastern Lake Ontario are forecast to be unhealthy due to fine particulate matter from the smoke. An expanded statewide air quality advisory also remained in effect until 11:59 p.m. Wednesday. The conditions are a reminder of the previous bad air quality of May 2023, likewise caused by an enormous smoke plume from fires in the Canadian wilderness. Rainy conditions on Saturday might provide some relief, Lefton said. State health officials are advising people to be careful as the smoke continues, especially sensitive groups, including elderly and young people, and those with health conditions such as asthma or lung disease. I think it's important that if you're a senior citizen, I really wouldn't go outside unless you needed to, and if you did, make it for a short period of time, said Commissioner Dr. James McDonald of the State Department of Health. If you have to go outside for a long period of time, I would definitely make sure you have a KN-95 mask with you. If you don't have air conditioning, consider getting someplace where there is air conditioning. He also recommended people with inhalers for asthma and similar conditions carry them on their person. New York State is also making KN95 masks available to counties who want a supply, he said. Although cooling centers are usually associated with extreme heat events, they can also help people get away from harmfully smoky environments. Fine particulate matter consists of tiny, solid particles or liquid droplets 2.5 microns or less in diameter. It's caused by fires, vehicle exhaust, power plants, and chemical reactions in the atmosphere. Exposure can cause irritation to the eyes, nose, and throat, coughing or sneezing, runny nose, and shortness of breath. The Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America recommends keep windows and doors closed to help prevent polluted outside air from entering. Keep children in rooms and areas with cleaner air. Avoid using anything which burns, such as wood fireplaces, gas logs, gas stoves, and candles. Don't do things in your home that stirs up particles already inside your home. Run your air conditioner if you have one. Set the air intake to recirculate and keep the filter clean. If you don't have air conditioning, staying inside with the windows closed may become dangerous if the weather is extremely hot. Seek alternative shelter. If you must go outdoors, wear a mask with a particulate respirator. Look for NIOSH and N95 or P100 printed on the mask. It should have 2 straps and cover your nose and chin. McDonald recommended drivers use the option to recirculate interior air, if they have one, instead of allowing air from outside. Additional effects were seen in the GLOW region as the Batavia Concert Band moved Wednesday evening's concert, normally conducted outside at Centennial Park, to indoors at the Stuart Steiner Theater at Genesee Community College. A family cool-down activity scheduled by the Pike Fire Department was also canceled due to the outside conditions. In the meantime, all outdoor activities and outdoor work were canceled Wednesday at Holly Central School and have also been canceled Thursday as a precaution. Student activities and work will move indoors. A satellite image released Wednesday afternoon by the National Weather Service showed a massive smoke plume sweeping approximately from central Canada to the New York City area and beyond. State officials recommend people monitor air condition quality using www.airnow.gov. Our next article is from Hemlock. DEC's Bald Eagle program turns 50. The successful program by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to bring fertilized eggs and eaglets to the nest of a breeding pair of bald eagles on Hemlock Lake began 50 years ago this year. In 1976, during our bicentennial year, the DEC joined an ongoing effort to observe the eagles, who turned out to be the last nesting pair in New York State, and actively hack their nest to help reintroduce new eaglets into the landscape, fostered by the last survivors of a nearly extinct species. This year, as part of our focus on America's 250th year, we look closer at the collaboration between concerned citizens and the department charged with protecting the environment for future generations. It was a uniquely American effort, both because it saved the bird that is our national emblem and because it continued the American tradition of respect and appreciation for nature continued from indigenous peoples to Henry David Thoreau to Teddy Roosevelt to Rachel Carson. It also included free citizens of the Republic engaged in moral action, petitioning their government to change. And it worked. Despite the program's success, its origins begin much farther back with two public environmental health movements over the course of more than a century: the development of Rochester's water system and the banning of DDT. Hemlock Lake, area of the Finger Lakes. In a July 1972 article by Rochester historian Blake McKelvey called Water for Rochester, published in Rochester History, the cholera epidemic in the rapidly expanding city of Rochester led local leaders to establish a Rochester Water Company charter, but the city could not reach a consensus about an appropriate plan of action. Two systems were proposed: bring water up from Lake Ontario or bring water about 20 miles down from Hemlock Lake. But the issue remained as the need for water for fire suppression persisted, alongside continued epidemics from drinking well water. Other plans were proposed by a civil engineer named Daniel Marsh, including the Lake Ontario and Hemlock plans, but also ones that would tap the Genesee River, Little Black Creek, and an audacious plan to dam up the entire Honeoye watershed. Given that the Hemlock plan was gravity-fed, it was deemed to be the most practical, reliable, and least expensive. Contracts were given to build a conduit from Hemlock Lake to a reservoir near Mount Hope, but plans were delayed due to the Civil War. When construction began, it became an open canal ditch, 1,800 feet long from the foot of Hemlock Lake, feeding into a conduit 24 inches in diameter that extended some 16 miles to a reservoir near Henrietta. When this proved to be insufficient and in need of repair, numerous failures by the water company and policy changes by Rochester City Councils held up meaningful change until the creation of a Water Works Commission. At much greater cost than anticipated, a 28-mile iron conduit was completed, delivering water to what later became Highland Park. Service to the first domestic customers began in September 1876. The system had an estimated capacity of 9 million gallons a day and was comprised of two large reservoirs, one in the town of Rush and one in Highland Park, which supplied pressure to force the water through 58 miles of distribution pipes to 521 street hydrants, 27 water troughs for horses, and at the start, 2,700 domestic customers. Rochester grew quickly, doubling its acreage by that time, but soon discovered that that the conduit was leaking. The city considered tapping Canisius Lake instead of renewing the Hemlock system, but decided that the Hemlock Lake supply was worth it. In fact, the city began to be more protective of its water supply. A proposed resort on Hemlock Lake prompted a new bill to buy up the entire shoreline as a sanitary precaution. Under condemnation procedures, the city passed a bill to purchase land at the head of the lake and a strip of 200 acres back from the shore in order to safeguard the lake from contamination. Soon, seeing increased need, the city added Canadice Lake to the water supply system. A large later series of agreements between the Monroe County Water Authority and the Lake Ontario Water Company gave Rochester the supply it needed, and the land that the city acquired became an important nature preserve. Surrounding farmlands were planted with trees or left to revert to wild forests, and in 2010, the Hemlock Canadice State Forest was established to keep the two jewels of the Finger Lakes in pristine condition forever. All of those efforts to provide clean drinking water for Rochester unintentionally created a 6,849-acre habitat for wildlife, including the last nesting pair of bald eagles in New York State. Despite the advantage of that abundant habitat, the bald eagles face pressure from pollutants such as dichloro-diphenyl trichloroethene, or DDT. DDT was an incredibly effective pesticide used first to control malaria and typhus, then applied to the agriculture sector post-World War II. In 1962, Rachel Carson published her seminal work, Silent Spring, which sparked widespread public concern about DDT, but it wasn't until the Environmental Protection Agency was created that DDT was banned in 1972. It was really in the 1960s, and it was part of the larger environmental movement that led to the creation of the EPA and the Endangered Species Act, the Clean Water Act, all of that groundbreaking legislation that created the tools to be able to do things like evaluate and identify DDT as essentially a detriment to the environment, even though it had beneficial effects, said Dan Rosenblatt, Ph.D., a DEC Wildlife Diversity Section head in Albany. It was a very good insecticide. There's no doubt about it. There is a reason why it was used as broadly as it was. But it wasn't until the early 70s that the tools to actually take that off the market were in place, Rosenblatt said. The fact that the perfect environment was created around Hemlock Lake was helpful as a sanctuary for the bald eagles, but it did not shield them from the effects of DDT, such as eggshell thinning and declining productivity. Even if you had good eagle habitat and you had eagles present on the landscape, you still weren't getting eagle productivity because of those toxicology impacts. The banning of DDT and getting that out of the environment was definitely the number one action that set the stage for the recovery of the species throughout the lower 48 states, Rosenblatt said. The other issue was the intentional persecution of raptors, including eagles, who were seen as a danger to poultry, waterfowl, and rabbits, although eagles mostly eat fish and carrion. There were also old wives' tales of babies being carted off by eagles and that sort of thing, Rosenblatt said. In the 1800s, there was really no regulatory framework for wildlife in general, and it was not uncommon for raptors in general to be seen as a problem. So if folks saw them, they shot them. At that same time in the 1800s, particularly the Northeast, you had a lot of natural resource extraction, what we would call today unsustainable forestry management practices. So you did actually lose a lot of habitat as the birds themselves were being targeted and taken out of the environment, said Rosenblatt. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And we'll head to Oswego now, and our title is Donald Trump a Liability for Tenney? President's low popularity could pose issue for GOP incumbents. When President Donald Trump flew to upstate New York in 2018 to stump for the first time for Representative Claudia Tenney, then a first-term congresswoman in one of the closest House races that year, her beaming smile greeted him as he bounded off Air Force One. Later, at a fundraiser in Utica, Trump shook hands with and embraced Tenney, giving her a kiss on the cheek before offering a full-throated endorsement. And hopefully, we put Claudia right over the top where she belongs, Trump said to applause. Tenney lost her race, one of 40 seats Republicans lost in the House of Representatives, along with control of the chamber. Experts attributed much of the so-called blue wave that year to anti-Trump sentiment. So, could Tenney, who now represents a more Republican-leading district but remains a Trump stalwart, be dragged down by Trump as she seeks a fifth term in Congress this year? A spokeswoman for Tenney, Republican from Cleveland, did not respond to multiple emails or phone messages seeking comment. Her chief of staff did not respond to an email. Tenney's campaign did not respond to an email or Facebook message, and a phone number listed on her campaign website appeared to be disconnected. Historically, the president's party loses seats in the midterm elections, and Trump remains deeply unpopular overall, with polling showing voters concerned about his handling of the economy and inflation, particularly the rising price of gas and groceries. Trump is not on the ticket, yet this will be a referendum on him, said Luke Perry, a political science professor at Utica College, who has studied New York congressional races. That presents a challenge for Republicans, he said, because voters have shown that they like the idea of Trump being in power when he's not more than him actually being president. He said that speaks to Trump's campaigning skills. He's been able to use populism to his advantage and is an energetic, unorthodox candidate, Perry said. He's proven he can captivate enough voters to be elected, but we've also seen very low approval ratings when he is in office. That dynamic suggests that incumbent House Republicans in New York and elsewhere will face difficulty this election, Perry said. But those challenges will be most pronounced in districts where Democratic and Republican voters are evenly distributed, such as New York's 17th congressional district in the Hudson Valley, where Mike Lawler, the incumbent Republican, is facing one of the most competitive races in the country. Brian Arbour, a political science professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City, who studies congressional campaign strategy, agreed that Trump's low popularity is helping keep Democrats on track to win back control of the House. He said the biggest factors dragging Trump down are rising prices and inflation, as well as the Iran war, which Trump launched in February, that has sent gas prices skyrocketing. Trump vaulted back into office in part by courting voters frustrated with the country's economic direction, promising to bring prices down at his inauguration in January 2025. Numerous reports have painted a gloomy economic picture for Americans. Earlier this year, consumer prices were rising at the fastest rate in 3 years, outpacing wages. In May, the University of Michigan reported that its index of consumer sentiment had plunged to the lowest level recorded in 7 decades of surveys. The previous lowest level was in June 2022, when inflation was at its highest level in decades. In March, gas prices in the U.S. jumped above an average of $4 a gallon for the first time since 2022, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. According to AAA, it was the largest monthly increase the Motor Club had ever recorded. In late June, AAA reported that U.S. gas prices fell below $4 a gallon on average for the first time since the first full month of war with Iran. But Americans are still paying about $1 more per gallon than they had been before the war. Rising fuel costs have pushed U.S. inflation to its highest level in 3 years. Trump has frequently dismissed economic concerns in recent months, telling reporters at one point that, "I don't think about Americans' financial situation." Trump remains deeply unpopular overall, according to polls. He has just a 40% approval rating in the Real Clear Politics polling average. About 1/3 of U.S. adults approve of Trump's approach to the economy, according to a June AP NORC poll. And about 2/3, 65%, of U.S. adults disapprove of how Trump is handling issues with Iran. "I see lots of upside for Democrats nationally," Arbour said. "I see fewer of them for the Republicans." Democrats are also likely to benefit from increased voter turnout, he said, adding that anger is very motivating for voters. Republicans, on the other hand, have a unique challenge this year when it comes to voter turnout, Arbour said, noting that Republican turnout dips when Trump isn't on the ballot. "They've got a bunch of people who really like to vote for Trump, but only seem to like to vote for Trump," he said. Perry said he expects Tenney to win her election this year, but by a smaller margin. He said Tenney benefited from President Joe Biden's unpopularity in his first midterm elections in 2022 and continued dissatisfaction with the Biden administration in 2024. But Perry and Arbour said they still expect Tenney to win re-election this year by a comfortable margin because of the lopsided voter enrollment numbers in the 24th Congressional District where Tenney is running. The 24th District includes all or parts of 14 counties, including Oswego County. It stretches more than 200 miles around Lake Ontario and through the Finger Lakes, from Watertown to Lockport. Republicans outnumber Democrats 228,000 voters to 127,000 voters. There are about 141,000 independent voters. In 2024, Tenney beat Democrat David Wagenhauser 235,867, that's 65.7% votes, to 123,317 votes, that's 34.3%. She defeated her Democratic opponent in 2022 by a similar margin. While Tenney's margin of victory might dip this year, Perry said the overwhelming Republican voter advantage in the 24th District still favors Tenney to be reelected. "Perceptions of presidents are filtered through one's partisan perspective," he said. "Even though the president is unpopular, he's much more popular with Republicans than Democrats." Perry said that when the 24th District was created during redistricting, it was specifically drawn to concentrate Republicans to give Democrats an advantage in other areas, essentially making it a Republican stronghold. Tenney, who's 65, unsuccessfully ran for the old 22nd Congressional District seat in the Utica area in 2014. She was elected there in 2016, lost in 2018, and then won in 2020 by a razor-thin margin. When redistricting merged portions of that district into a district that favored Democrats, Tenney moved to the new 24th District. Perry said the old 22nd District in the Utica area was much more competitive for Tenney because Republicans there had a relatively modest enrollment advantage, and the area had a history of electing moderate Democrats who worked well with Republican legislators. Anthony Brindisi, the Democrat who defeated Tenney in 2018, was also something of a political unicorn. Perry said Brindisi was a young, moderate state assemblyman who had been a fixture in the Utica community, including serving on the school board, and was fairly well respected. He also won because he was unable to match Tenney in urban voter-rich Oneida County, Perry said. You had these unique circumstances that came together, along with it being Trump's first midterm and his unpopularity, and I don't see those circumstances in New York 24, he said, adding that in the current political environment, it's hard to predict things with great certainty. Tenney's Democratic opponent is Alyssa Ellman. The 42-year-old Lockport resident is a disabled veteran who served in the Army in Afghanistan and suffered a rare cancer associated with exposure to toxic burn pits used by the military. She worked as a special education teacher and took a job with the Department of Veterans Affairs in 2024 before being fired by the Trump administration. Turning back to Batavia now, demolition of Old Y set to restart. Crews encountered issue with adjacent OFA building. Demolition of the old YMCA building is set to begin in full force starting Monday. Crews began exterior work in mid-May, but were forced to halt after encountering an issue with the adjacent and connected Genesee County office for the aging building at 2 Bank Street. The recent delay was caused when a support beam in the OFA building was shifted slightly from its original position as the demolition company began the separation of the shared boiler room, said Chief Executive Officer Eric Fix of the GLOW YMCA. The demolition company had to stop production and provide shoring for the building, so the remaining part of the demolition can safely be completed, and the beam eventually be replaced. This is what caused the OFA to close their offices since June. The YMCA stopped using the old building at 209 East Main Street in January 2025. Its services moved to the 78,000 square foot Healthy Living campus next door. Abatement began this past October, but the demolition process was proven difficult, Fix said. Crews are continuing to shore up the OFA building this week, he said, along with providing necessary protections for the Healthy Living campus and the Seymour building, which houses Go Art, at 201 East Main Street. Demolition will restart Monday, barring any more difficulties. The current plan calls for a 5 to 6 week demolition schedule, however. We are hopeful it can be done sooner than that, Fix said. Once down, it is estimated that site work and creation of an additional parking lot will take another 6 to 8 weeks. However, we do understand that there may be more delays as we move forward, as this is proving to be a very difficult demolition project, he continued. I will say that all parties are working together to ensure that the rest of the process will go as planned. The old Y was built in 1977 and was home to athletics, daycare, family birthdays, fitness classes, holiday celebrations, and other activities over the decades. The OFA building remains temporarily closed until further notice. An OFA staff member is available weekdays during regular business hours in the YMCA community room at the Healthy Living campus on 211 East Main Street to assist residents with walk-in services. All other Office for the Aging staff are working from an alternate location and can be reached by calling 585-343-1611. Again, that number is 585-343-1611. Staying in Batavia now, demonstrators to decry Batavia ICE expansion Sunday. Protests set to take place at Batavia City Hall. Organizers from 2 area groups plan to rally Sunday in opposition to the planned expansion of Batavia's ICE detention center. Members of GLOW Community Alliance and the Genesee County Democratic Socialists of America plan to protest the addition of 100 beds to the 650-bed detention center in a demonstration to be held from noon to 2 p.m. Sunday in front of Batavia City Hall. We don't need an addition on the detention center in Batavia. Having a detention center in Batavia to begin with is not ideal. Genesee County DSA President Gina Schwellenmanow wrote in a press release announcing the demonstration. We are a community of neighbors, and this extends to our immigrant neighbors. Spreading hate and disappearing members of our community is not welcome here. Speaking to the Daily News, Schwellenmanow said the groups were already planning a demonstration Sunday as part of the national Good Trouble Lives On effort, which honors the civil rights activism of Representative John Lewis, who died in 2020. The groups pivoted to focus on the ICE facility when its expansion was announced earlier this month, they said. In general, we're in disagreement with what is happening with ICE in the country and mass deportation in general, Schwellenmanow said. We're trying to raise awareness about the proposed expansion of the detention center in Batavia. East Bethany attorney Jane Schmeider, representing Glow Community Alliance, said in the press release that the group opposes detention and deportation altogether. Batavia will be known as the destination for mistreating and caging our Hispanic neighbors, she wrote. That is not who we are. ICE said earlier this month that the detention center expansion is intended to make up for the loss of use of county jails in New York. It comes alongside the conversion of parts of a federal building in downtown Rochester and a warehouse in Newburgh, Orange County, into ICE detention centers. Details surrounding the Batavia Detention Center's expansion remain murky. The agency described the planned facilities as hard-sided, but has not responded to requests from the Daily News and other media outlets to explain the meaning of that term. Reporting by the New York Focus found that other ICE projects described internally as hard-sided have used prefabricated buildings, trailers, and tents with cinder block walls. It's also unclear when construction will take place. Because the project is taking place on federal land, it's not required to seek approval from local planning authorities, and Genesee County Planning Director Felipe Ultramari said earlier this month that his office had not been informed of the project. The Batavia Detention Center has frequently been well over its 650-bed capacity since spring 2025, according to data obtained last October by Buffalo-based outlet Investigative Post. At several points last summer, the data shows, the facility held more than 750 detainees, at times approaching 800. A report issued in June 2025 by DHS's Office of Inspector General also found instances when officers used inappropriate force on detainees and noted that the facility lacked a full-time doctor or dentist and that detainees' requests and complaints were often left unanswered for longer periods than allowed. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our next article carries the headline, Freedom Village author calls memoir a cautionary tale. Presentation set Sunday at Act 4 Books. To some, Freedom Village USA on the shores of Seneca Lake was viewed as a ministry. From the outside, it appeared to be a program to rehabilitate troubled teens and claimed to be a God-ordained mission to rehabilitate and restore lost souls in the heart of the Finger Lakes. To others, it was a cult. And to those on the inside, like Mary Rosenberger, it proved to be a community with an atmosphere of spiritual abuse, fear, and obedience to its founder and leader, a man everyone called Pastor. Rosenberger, who spent the first 24 years of her life inside Freedom Village, shares her unique story in her book, Freedom Village, a Memoir. Payette Publishing, 178 pages, November 2024, which she will discuss during a July 19th appearance at Act 4 Books, 4 South Main Street in Perry. This book is not only written for victims of spiritual abuse, it is also a cautionary tale to those who have been entrusted with leadership in the house of God, Rosenberger said in a Facebook post following a book signing in January. Rosenberger, who first documented her upbringing at Freedom Village in her blog Out from the Inside, will discuss her experiences at Freedom Village at her Perry appearance. She will then be available for questions and a book signing. Her program is scheduled for 1 p.m. Through the writing process, Rosenberger underwent what she describes as a spiritual deconstruction, ultimately emerging with a faith she considers healthier and more grounded than anything she experienced at Freedom Village, she said in a January 2025 interview with the Finger Lakes Daily News. In her memoir, Rosenberger shares the story of her family's 30-year staff residency and eventual exodus from the now-closed Freedom Village. Her parents were among the first staff members recruited to work at the village in the early 1980s. The memoir, her first book, has been described as a daring, vulnerable story of both light and darkness, inviting readers along in the relentless pursuit of healing and freedom. Rosenberger, who was born and raised at Freedom Village, shares that living at Freedom Village shaped her relationship with herself, others, and God. Rosenberger, her husband, their children, and many of the staff left Freedom Village in 2011, according to the Finger Lakes Daily News story. I had debilitating anxiety and a lot of mental issues from growing up there that I didn't even know were not my fault, she told the Finger Lakes Daily News. Writing, she said, provided a path toward recovery. Freedom Village closed in 2019. Rosenberger has continued to write about her pursuit of the heart of God on her blog. She also explores her lifelong interests of singing and dance at her new church. She lives in upstate New York with her husband, 3 children, and a menagerie of pets. Act 4 Books is a community-supported bookstore. And our next article comes from New York. James secures 23andMe settlement. Genetic testing company failed to protect customers' data. New York Attorney General Letitia James and a bipartisan coalition of 42 other attorney generals today secured $18 million from genetic testing company 23andMe for failing to protect customers' private genetic data. In October 2023, 23andMe announced it had discovered a data breach affecting 6.9 million consumers, including 305,245 people in New York State. The breach exposed a broad range of customer data, including genetic ancestry information. Some customers' data was even published for sale on the dark web. As part of the settlement, Attorney General James and the coalition have secured new data protection requirements to secure 23andMe customer data. 23andMe will also pay more than $705,000 to New York. Companies have a duty to protect their customers' personal information from hackers, but 23andMe put millions of its customers at risk with its flimsy security measures, said Attorney General James. New Yorkers trusted 23andMe with their sensitive and personal genetic data, only to find that data stolen and put up for sale on the dark corners of the internet. As a result of our coalition's action, 23andMe will pay for violating the law, and strict rules will be put in place to protect their customers. The October 2023 data breach of 23andMe exposed sensitive genetic information belonging to millions of customers. Some of this data was then listed for sale on the dark web, exposing customers to further hacks and identity theft. 23andMe learned about the breach months after impacted personal information was publicly available. The company first denied a breach and then, once it confirmed the breach, blamed customers for how their accounts were set up or how passwords were used. In the immediate aftermath of the data breach, Attorney General James and the coalition began a multi-state investigation, and found that 23andMe failed to take critical security measures, including safeguards against cyber attacks utilizing stolen credentials, including comparing passwords against block lists of known breached passwords or requiring multi-factor authentication, appropriate rate limiting or intrusion prevention, logging, monitoring, or other tools likely to detect a data breach, investigating or addressing unusual login patterns, including, for example, a massive spike in login attempts, fixing known vulnerabilities, properly reviewing and testing design features. In March 2025, 23andMe filed for bankruptcy protection, and James and the coalition filed claims related to the data breach investigation. In June 2025, James and a bipartisan coalition of 27 other attorneys general sued 23andMe to protect Americans' personal genetic information during the company's bankruptcy. And we'll move to the opinion page now for our next article. Do politicians owe health reports to the public? And this is the editorial from the Chicago Tribune. We were glad to see the photo Sunday of a smiling Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, alongside his wife Elaine Chao. The 84-year-old McConnell revealed Sunday that he had been hospitalized following a rough June 14th fall at his home, leading, he said, to mild pneumonia. In a statement, McConnell attributed the lack of information as to his whereabouts to his reticence as an older American to share health information. Folks of my generation often hesitate to share the vulnerability that comes with growing older, he said. Even in the public eye, I feel that same instinct. I can't help it. Well, with all due respect to McConnell, he should help it. There is no shame in having a fall, going to a hospital, or entering rehab. The senator's disappearance from the public eye led to all manner of public speculation, much of it cruel and also unwelcome fodder for many Americans' worst instincts. We should all wish our elected officials well when it comes to their personal health and look forward to their return to provide service to their constituents. McConnell is hardly alone in this reticence. Representative Tom Keene, Jr., Republican from New Jersey, disappeared for some 4 months, missing House votes throughout, before finally revealing on June 30th that he had been suffering from depression and had been hospitalized. He explained this by saying that he had at first thought he could push through his condition and did not believe that this would result in a long-term stay. There is no shame in suffering from depression either. Keene should have been more forthcoming. The complexity here, of course, is that we're all legally entitled to some privacy over our health, and rightly so. But we'd argue that elected officials should not stay silent when they have to be absent from votes, nor, as in Keene's case, merely reference a personal medical matter that gives constituents insufficient reasonable information. These officials are not obligated to disclose everything, but there is a reasonable middle ground here that respects voters' rights to know about the health of their representatives. We've seen many examples of the opposite, including the Princess of Wales in the UK, who disclosed her cancer diagnosis in 2024, and Senator John Fetterman, whose office disclosed in a timely way several medical events involving the Democratic Pennsylvania senator. On a different but related matter, we also were glad to hear the office of Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who died Saturday, provide the presumptive cause of death, but emphasize that details would come only after a full autopsy report. The death of the senator from South Carolina also was a catalyst for some Americans' nastier instincts too. A continuance, you might say, of President Donald Trump's refusal to be gracious about the public service of Robert Mueller following Mueller's death in March. We, of course, support the full journalistic accounting of a political figure's professional life, but we can believe in that and still abhor the cruelty and lack of grace we see all around us these days. Given that reality, secrecy only makes things worse. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Our next article comes from the Mercury News. Sully Sullenberger receives Alzheimer's diagnosis. Heroic pilot says photographic memory began to fail. Captain Chelsea Sully Sullenberger III, the Bay Area-based pilot who became a national hero in 2009 after he landed his U.S. Airways flight on the Hudson River and saved 155 passengers and crew, disclosed Tuesday that he has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. The 75-year-old retired pilot responsible for the Miracle on the Hudson plane landing revealed his diagnosis in a statement to People magazine. "It is early stage," Sullenberger told People. "For now, this means a name may not come easily to me. I forget a story I have recently told, or I don't sleep as well, but I am in the beginning of this long journey." He and his wife, Lori Sullenberger, explained that this journey of living with a progressive neurodegenerative brain disorder began a year ago after he noticed that something was a bit off with what he describes as his photographic memory, People reported. Over time, Sullenberger found he would forget things and couldn't recall details he once easily could summon. So far, the disease has done little to impact Sullenberger's renowned powers of unflappability and focus, Lori Sullenberger told People. Just as he was the same steady person before and after Flight 1549, he is the same steady person now, before and after this diagnosis, Lori Sullenberger said. The couple acknowledged that they don't know what the future holds, but Lori Sullenberger said they are trying to live each day with hope and joy. The former longtime Danville residents, who currently live in San Francisco, according to People, share 2 daughters and a granddaughter. Sullenberger is the second major Bay Area celebrity in the past month to reveal he's been diagnosed with the incurable disorder, which over time slows a person's movements, memory, and speech. Danny Glover, the legendary San Francisco film and TV actor and lifelong activist, revealed that he too has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Glover, who's 79, said in an interview with the Today Show that he had been living with the condition for several years. In statements that both Glover and Sullenberger made to the media about their conditions, they pointed out that they are among the more than 7 million Americans, 65 and older, who are living with the disease. "I can live with it, in a sense," Glover, the 4-time Emmy-nominated actor, told NBC Nightly News anchor Lester Holt. He said, "I'm sure as it advances, things are going to be different and changing." Both Glover and Sullenberger also have shown a desire to use their national profiles to educate the public about Alzheimer's disease and to let others dealing with it know they are not alone, as People reported. "I have spent my life in service in the U.S. Air Force as a commercial airline pilot, an accident investigator, and as the U.S. ambassador to ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization," said Sullenberger, whose heroic act on January 15, 2009, led to him being played by Tom Hanks in Clint Eastwood's 2016 film, Sully. "I have advocated for the safety of the traveling public for decades. And, of course, after the landing of Flight 1549 in the Hudson River, I used the greater voice afforded to me by the Miracle on the Hudson to further aviation safety by speaking out on the many issues facing the industry," Sullenberger continued. "This new phase of my life has challenged what it means to be of service," Sullenberger also said. "And the answer is to speak up. It is my hope that by sharing this, other families living in the shadows with this disease will feel they too can step forward." More than anything, Sullenberger said he wants to be an advocate for hope. "So many people told us after Flight 1549 that the outcome gave them hope," he said. "Lori, my incredible partner of 37 years, says we can all use a little of that hope right now. And we'll turn to Leroy now for our next article, Oetka Festival to feature America 250 Twist. Event returns this weekend to Leroy. The America 250 celebration will continue this weekend in the village. Leroy is gearing up for this year's Oetka Festival celebration with the annual parade and activities set to feature a number of special editions in recognition of the 250th anniversary of America declaring its independence from Great Britain. People at Saturday's parade will see special 13-star flags, marchers dressed as Revolutionary War veterans, and a special drummer on the march. Leroy municipal historian Lynn Beluscio will have tents set up by the Tregon Park War Memorial, where the village's historic 13-star flag will be displayed for the remainder of the festival, along with a number of other America 250 themed activities. Visitors can take a selfie with cardboard cutouts of 4 famous founding fathers, including George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, and Benjamin Franklin. Beluscio will put together a special America 250 barn quilt during the festival, with patrons getting an opportunity to contribute to the design by painting in a square of the quilt. There will also be a Betsy Ross flag at the tent, which people can sign. The flag will later be added to a time capsule being put together during the festival weekend. The time capsule will also include photographs, essays written by local students, a festival t-shirt from this year's celebration, copies of the Leroy Weekend Gazette newspaper, pressed leaves from the new Liberty Tree, and other related items. Attendees can visit the newly planted Liberty Tree just to the right of Woodward Memorial Library on Walcott Street. The Liberty Tree is a part of a tradition that stems from the early days of the American Revolution. The original Liberty Tree in Boston served as the meeting place for the Sons of Liberty. The tree in the village is a hybrid between a sugar maple and a scarlet maple and is placed near the spot where the Liberty Tree once stood. Popular festival staples such as the kids' play area with bounce houses and obstacle courses, more than 60 food and merchandise vendors, and live music will be featured throughout the weekend. Food options include hot dogs and hamburgers from the Rotary Club of Leroy, Italian sausages from the Hope Center, beef on wick from Leroy First Presbyterian Church, and a chicken barbecue from Leroy United Methodist Church. The grand opening of the Hope Center's new location at 5456 Main Street will also take place. A ceremony at noon Sunday will dedicate a new memorial in Tregon Park in remembrance of John Aramino. Aramino was a 17-year-old Leroy High School student who died on Memorial Day of 1961, sacrificing his life to save a 9-year-old boy from an oncoming train. President John F. Kennedy awarded Aramino with the Justice Department's Young American Medal for bravery, the first time the medal had ever been given posthumously. All attendees on Sunday are invited to attend the dedication. And now we'll take a look at the Dear Abby column. Again, Dear Abby is written by Jean Phillips. Wife's change creates new issues at home is our first letter. Dear Abby, I've been with my wife for 23 years. We have 3 kids and are in our early 40s. My wife has always struggled with her weight, but 2 years ago she started a plan and has been successful. Her weight loss has prompted me to notice her more, and I've noticed as I've paid more attention to her in the last few years that she has a wandering eye. I think it is disrespectful. To be clear, I'm fully aware that attractive people exist, and a quick look is fine with me. I'm not sure if this started after her weight loss, but it has caused issues at home. I've brought it up with her, and we've had several arguments. I've presented multiple examples, and she claims it's my insecurities. While I do have insecurities, I would never jeopardize our relationship and only brought up this subject after multiple instances. We are at a standstill. I suggested a therapist for her, and things have only gotten worse. The therapist has said I have narcissistic traits, and it's creating a bigger wedge between us. I have thought about divorce multiple times. I need some advice, please. And that letter's from Eyes on Her in Connecticut. Dear Abby's response, Dear Eyes, has your wife's therapist ever met you? It seems strange that a professional would diagnose a client's husband from a distance as having narcissistic traits when the problem might be simple insecurity after your wife has become more attractive as a result of her weight loss. Yes, attractive people get more attention. And yes, people who were once less attractive may revel in their new status. However, this does not mean they are cheating. Because you were so quick to suggest a therapist for your wife, please consider some counseling for yourself. And our second letter, Dear Abby, I host family birthday dinners for my 2 adult children, their spouses, and my three grandchildren every year. This year, my son informed me that his son, the 8-year-old birthday boy, was having 2 friends, whom I had never met, sleep over and said they would also be at the birthday dinner. It was fine with me. The 3 of them, plus my other 2 grandchildren, ages 5 and 10, were so excited that they ran through the house screaming when we weren't eating. When we were seated at the table, they were still screaming. It was so loud you couldn't talk to the person next to you. Before dinner, they picked food off the buffet with their bare hands. They acted like wild animals. I didn't say anything to the kids because I thought it was up to my son and his wife to do it. The next day, my husband told me I should have spoken up since I was the host. Should I have stepped in? And that letter's from Failed Host in Pennsylvania. The response, Dear Host, yes, the party was in your home and your wishes and rules should have prevailed. Clearly, those children had never been taught not to behave the way they did. Someone should have said something, and that someone was you. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the July 16th, 2026 issues of the Batavia Daily News. We read from the Batavia Daily News every Saturday at 9 a.m. Your reader has been Will Evans. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the East Aurora Advertiser. At 11 o'clock, we have the Niagara Gazette. And at noon, we have the Dunkirk Observer. Stay with us for these readings and more throughout the day. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability